So after last week's video, I got a comment that said, you mentioned dealing with feedback. I'd love to see a video where you show some comments on your games, both good and bad, and how you deal with them. So this is from Alwyn Ninaber 9021, and Alwyn is actually my brother and the person that does almost all of the audio for Align Games. So I think I'm just going to answer Alvin's question. But I'm going to do it in two videos. So I'm going to do one video where I talk about handling negative feedback, which is going to be this video. And then I'm going to do another video that talks about handling positive feedback and, what to do with it. And that is what these videos are going to be about, is firstly, how to handle the feedback, and secondly, what should you do once you've received the feedback. And I'll show a few snippets from of feedback that I've gotten, in this case negative, from some of my games, because each of the games you release is going to get both good and bad feedback, and it just depends on what that feedback is and what you decide to do with that feedback. So as we go, I'll just post some snippets of feedback that I've gotten from my games. But to get into it, I've made a little list of things that I think are pertinent to this conversation and things that you should do when you get negative feedback. So firstly, stay calm and objective. Separate emotions from the feedback. Focus on understanding the specific issue and how it can be improved. So I remember the first game that I released commercially was a game called Grunt 1914. Now, if you follow me, you might have heard of this before, but this was a very overscoped, ambitious project that just shouldn't have been made, especially not as a first game. And I think it's sitting at mixed now, which is actually quite good for what it is, because it's a FPS multiplayer game. But at that point, it was getting mostly good feedback, but some of the negative feedback was very negative. And some of that feedback it got me to a point where I had gotten emotional. And I think it might be because it was my first game at that point. This is in 2019. But I remember feeling emotional, feeling angry, feeling sad. And, while these days I don't really get that anymore, just probably because of experience, I remember it being a big deal to me back then. And the one emotion that really got to me was anger. And, anger and business doesn't mix. Well, it shouldn't. So when you get that negative feedback, I remember the comment that I got as well. And the thing is, that comment was correct in a few ways. I'll post that comment to show you. You can read over it while I talk. But that comment was correct in a few ways, the Steam review that I had gotten. It was a bit overly negative, I remember that, but it was correct in some of the things that it said and proclaimed. So I remember getting angry and typing back a comment on that review that I shouldn't have done. I think I might have removed it since or something, I can't find it, but this is the wrong approach. Now, stay calm and objective. And if I had done that in that moment, if I had stayed calm, taken a breath, just, relax, it is only a review, it's just one review, and if I had been objective, I would have seen in that moment that the person had some valid points. It doesn't matter if he was negative or being mean or rude, he had some valid points, and if I had been calm, I would have handled it differently, and it wouldn't have led to an argument and ultimately a useless waste of time on my end. So secondly, the second thing that I would do to handle negative feedback, evaluate the source. So how credible is the source of the negative review or negative comments on your YouTube channel, or whatever it might be, a mean message that you've gotten? How credible is that person? Is that someone that is going around and posting these things because they have nothing better to do with their time? Is it someone that is higher up in the industry, in press? Is it anyone that you should be really concerning yourself with? Consider the experience and credibility of the person providing feedback. Constructive criticism is valuable, but baseless negativity might not be. And that's what I'm getting at. It might just be something where in that instance perhaps it is better to just ignore that person and just move on with your day and just do what you were going to do anyway. Number 3, look for patterns. If multiple people give similar feedback, it's worth addressing. Consistent issues across various players can reveal areas for improvement. Now, this is a big one. If someone leaves a negative comment on your game and you don't agree with it, and it comes and goes, you ignore it or you reply, whatever you do, but it's only one comment, that's the end of it. That's one thing. But if multiple people leave comments on your game about a similar thing, so let's use an example. Your movement doesn't feel smooth enough. This is just a simple example. If more than 3 or 4 people are saying that exact thing, then you might need to start thinking, okay, perhaps my movement just doesn't feel good enough. Maybe it's not smooth enough. And so, just check for patterns. Check to see if people are all complaining about the same thing, or if it's just a straggler comment, someone that has an individual opinion that maybe doesn't align with your vision for the game. Number 4, use it for growth. Treat negative feedback as an opportunity to refine your game. It can highlight blind spots and areas you might have overlooked. And this ties into the previous one about looking for patterns. So if you then go and you test that movement, and the movement is to you, maybe it does feel okay, but players are saying it's not good enough. Look at other YouTubers, game dev YouTubers, see how they implement movement, look at tutorials, and just, maybe redo that system, or at least improve that system, and take the opportunity to create a fix or a pattern and just make that better in that instance. Now, this depends on how big the problem is. If it is something like your network code isn't good enough, that's not going to be something you're just going to fix. That might be something where it's not really worth going back and trying to fix that, because that is a fundamental issue. Our movement can be fundamental because it depends on how big the game is and how many systems have tied into that movement system. But in general, movement or basic attacks, or maybe camera issues, these are things that are fixable if you put in a little bit of time. And then lastly here we have communicate and engage. Acknowledge the feedback publicly or privately. Let people know you're taking it seriously and working on improvements. So this comes down to the question, should you reply on your reviews? And this is something that Steam actually doesn't want people doing. They don't want you to reply on reviews. This is something that Steam doesn't actually want you to do, because I think most of the time in their experience, developers replying on comments lead to arguments. And what happens is these arguments then need to be arbitrated, and Steam needs to they need to mediate these arguments. And so it creates more work for them, because at the end of the day, these arguments are sort of more or less useless in their eyes. These are small games that they don't really care about that much. And if they now have to spend resources and time to mediate arguments between people that in their eyes don't matter to their algorithms, it's just not something they want to deal with. And that makes sense from a business perspective. So the question is, should you reply on something? And this comes down to number 1, stay calm and objective. Is it worth your time to reply? If it is, maybe just say, thank you for your note. I agree or disagree with it. I will fix it. I don't have time to fix it. Whatever you do, stay cordial, stay professional, because remember, you're presenting something that is representing yourself and your studio, representing your business and your company, and you don't want to become someone that can be made fun of or be made a mockery in the eyes of the public. If a YouTuber picks up on an argument happening in your comments, this is just an example. You don't want to seem unprofessional, because you don't know what the future holds and what work you might do in the future, and you don't want your past actions to affect that future. You don't want to have people make predefined notions and predefined ideas of who you are as a developer and what your company does and the kind of games you produce. Basically, you don't want people to think your games are bad before they even come out. So, yeah, just, communicate and engage, but do it in a way that makes sense. If that engagement is worth your time, do that. It is probably best to do it privately, and if someone is being especially nasty, in the end of the day, they are the ones that look bad, because most of your actual players, the ones that are going to take a look at the reviews, they're just going to think that person's an asshole, most probably, if the game itself represents a good experience. So these are my tips for handling negative feedback. A few years ago, I probably would have said something different, but I've learned to be a little bit more calm and collected, objective throughout these things. And even now, I still get negative feedback on some of my games and some of my assets and videos and whatever. But at the end of the day, we are all people, we're all human beings, and people have opinions. And I've just come to a place where I don't care if someone has a negative opinion. If I can use it and learn from it, I will try to do that. But if it's just an asshole being an asshole, I'm not really going to look at that twice. I'm just going to let it go, and I'm not even going to delete it either. It can just sit there for all I care. It doesn't really matter to me. So I'm sure that if you follow these items on this list, and I will post the list on screen and in the comments below in the description, you should be able to sort of use this to just handle the feedback effectively without getting emotional, without struggling, and at the end of the day realize that this is a business and you need to treat it like one. And that's basically what it comes down to. So remember that the people leaving you comments, good and bad, are your prospective fans and players, and so it is important to handle them with a sense of just general animosity. So that's going to be about it for the video. Do you agree with my list? Do you think that sometimes it is maybe good to to get emotional, or do you agree that you should handle these sorts of things in a professional manner? And if you do have feedback to share with a player, or a response to their questions and to their reviews, you should probably do it privately, not negatively, positively. You should handle that privately. So let me know what you think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? And thanks for watching. I hope to see you in the next one. Cheers.